Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. This is Frank.
And this is Rivka.
Riv, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was delightful. Food was had. It was good company. And I got to bed early. So all around a good day. How was yours?
Very chill, standard boilerplate Thanksgiving. Actually, a lot of my family wasn't even there this year, so it kind of felt like a Thanksgiving light. But it was still lovely to see everyone, hang out with my dad. Shout out to Tom, our top listener. But
Hi, Tom.
Glad to be back and really interested to speak with you about our A-block topic here at the beginning. So usually, we try to talk about news stories that have something to do in the world of media and entertainment. This is an anti-capitalist movie podcast, but today we're going to break that and just talk about some straight up news because...
Too good to miss.
Yes. So today, on the day that we were recording, the CEO of United Healthcare, a man named Brian Thompson, was fatally shot in New York City in what the police said appears to be a premeditated, pre-planned, targeted attack. Police are still searching for the shooter. The NYPD has put up a $10,000 reward for any information that could lead to his capture, which is, firstly, I don't think I've ever seen that for when regular New Yorkers are killed. Have you ever seen that? The NYPD offering a reward? A $10,000 reward? No. Wonder what it is that sets Brian Thompson apart.
It's kind of like they're here to protect property and the billionaire class.
Interesting take. But yeah, I really wanted to talk. I really wanted to talk to you about this because I've been having a few conversations here and there, some with friends, family, and I don't know. I think an event like this requires really serious, thoughtful analysis because I think too easily it can just be because I've seen a lot of stuff on the internet today of people straight up celebrating, and I don't know. I'm trying to find a way to talk about this in a way that contextualizes the event without necessarily advocating for this kind of violence, because
I'll give you some context. I mean, there's much greater context, but when you texted me about this, I was like, oh, funny, because I've been on the fucking phone with New York Marketplace, like, trying to figure out healthcare all morning. I mean, that's the context I feel like is that basic. It's like the context of, we've covered this. Nina Turner was on. We did a great episode on John Q, and we covered a lot of, like, the healthcare issues.
Yeah.
But it continues to be it's so astounding that we are all so complacent and sit by while we are in this, like, forced into a system where we have to die, essentially, because the healthcare is not guaranteed and they make it so complicated and insane. And there are people out there, capitalists, who are just profiting, and that is their full business, and they profit off of the ill health and deaths of all of these Americans. So that's the context, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, I think if you're an American and you have dealt with the American healthcare system,
if you've been to the fucking hospital, you get it.
You understand the context, yes. And just to attach some numbers to this, United Healthcare has the highest claim denial rate of any of the major private insurers here in the U.S. Earlier this year, or maybe it was last year, they came under fire because they started using AI to review claims, which a lawsuit alleges has been wrongfully denying claims, specifically to elderly patients who need like some sort of long-term outpatient care or something like that. And also the one that I just have committed to memory is that somewhere in the neighborhood of 35,000 to 45,000 Americans die every year from being underinsured or uninsured in this country. And bring all of that up because United Healthcare, the private insurance industry in this country, the healthcare, the hospital industry, all of the healthcare industry have over the course of decades spent hundreds and hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, lobbying Congress to ensure that Americans will not have universal health care. And not only that, that Americans will have shittier health care than other wealthy nations for more money. So these companies and, the shareholders and the board of executives that, people like Brian Thompson serve are the people directly responsible for this mass suffering in this country caused by this Byzantine nightmarish healthcare system. And, I was speaking to one friend who was like, but this violence isn't the answer. And honestly, someone killing one CEO is not going to solve anything. No. And I was like, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Like, they're just going to shuffle someone else in his place, business as usual. But I think when discussing this, the context is so important because I'm not saying I advocate for this, but I do understand why it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it. It doesn't solve anything. It's not even necessarily like a tactic.
Yeah.
I think it's an expression of this universal like despair. To me, when I see someone, when people get kind of like, well, you killing someone on, a civilian, I'm like, I don't know. Look, I think they're at war with the people. Like, I think you put yourself in a fucking position. We just named how many people die a year. Like, I think you're directly in, like, there is a war going on the poor and the working class. And so I don't need a government to name that, That doesn't mean that that I'm down for war or like tactics of violence, but the shit fucking happened. So I guess to me, I'm like, I don't differentiate that from like someone else being taken down in some kind of other condition, if that makes sense. Like, it's fucked up, but I'm like I guess like we're saying is like what we need to highlight is that the conditions are that extreme. And while maybe for some who don't think about it in that way, it's a moment to recognize like, yeah, it's that fucking extreme. Go watch John Q. Like, we covered it,
Yeah, or just listen to our John Q episode.
Or just look for new healthcare. See if you don't, or get sick. I mean, it's so insane. It feels like it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And to be clear, the police, the internet, we still do not know what the shooter's motivations were.
Right.
So really all of this discourse that has been happening based on conjecture. But I think people collectively understand when they see something like this. They're like, oh, I mean, yeah, obviously that would happen.
Yeah, that's it.
So even if this wasn't the explicit intent of the shooter, it still ends up making sense to, like you're saying, to the people who have suffered under this fucking system.
It is interesting because I'm in the middle of watching The Madness. Have you seen this on Netflix at all? I think it's like #1 show. Coleman Domingo, who I love.
Ooh, yeah.
As an actor. The show is kind of, but it's a thriller about a guy. I'm still like, I'd be interested for you to watch it and like to talk about its politics, because it demonizes like lots of groups, including Antifa, in these kind of hilarious ways. But it like, the premise is essentially Coleman Domingo is like a black, I guess we're supposed to kind of, we've never seen it, but I think that he has like somewhat, I'm not even going to say radical, but radical for CNN, like talking head. He's a commentator on there.
Okay.
Somehow he has a lot of money being a commentator. I'm like, I don't think commentators have that much money, but anyways, he's a commentator on CNN. He doesn't have his own show, is all my point is. And then he just, which I'm hoping is not the case, I hope we find out it's not, the whole plot isn't driven by coincidence, but like thus far, as far as I know, by coincidence, he's going to write a book and he rents a cabin next to who we find out is like a white supremacist dude. I'm only spoiling like the beginning amount, but like I'm not going to give away the whole thing. But anyways, he finds this dude's body. He find like, because the power goes out, he kind of stumbles upon this plot and it like unfurls from there. But he gets framed for like murdering this guy. And there are a lot of characters who are like the lefty characters. There's like a few characters who are like rooting for, it's interesting. It mirrors this sort of it mirrors the conversation being had around this shooter, where people are like, well, he murdered, I mean, this guy was like essentially the head of the Proud Boys who gets murdered. And so they're trying to like, they're trying to applaud him for like, yeah, you did something. Like his father was supposedly like, I think an activist. You know, there's like that whole storyline, but he like did something for the left, and but his character really seems to be more neoliberal. Like, I just want my family to be cool. Like, it's kind of starting to get absurd. But like, I'd be curious your thoughts on it. But when this story came up, I was like, it's the madness.
It's what I'm watching right now. Yeah, I'll check it out. I mean, I think, look, political theorists have written and thought about the concept of political violence for hundreds and if not thousands of years, and I'm not well versed enough in it to speak on it authoritatively enough, but you know, it's something. Maybe this is something we dive into on another, maybe like on a more well researched episode and less off the cuff. But it's a real thing, and it's something that, you know, even if you don't support it, it's something that you have to contend with as something that happens and understanding why it happens. Totally.
And we have this conversation all the time about, like, especially around our awards that we give at the end, what is political, like what is a political act in nature? And even if we find out that this person, it was a very personal, you know, maybe there was something really personal that happened to them, that they went after this man, maybe they lost someone in the healthcare system, that act still becomes inherently political. Even if the action was not intended, the conversation that comes out of it, it's like political, as we say. So we'll find, hopefully, maybe when you hear this, there'll be more revealed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is going to be a big story for a minute.
I mean, if it's as broad as the maddening, or the madness, then it's going to get crazy. It's not what you think. It's not what you think it is.
Also, I'm curious if any new listeners who came here for a fun Home Alone 2 conversation are like, what the fuck are they talking about? Don't worry, we are about to get to that conversation. So let's do it. But before we do, we just want to remind our audience and any of those new listeners that we here at Movies vs. Capitalism do not sell ads on this show. We rely on community support to keep the show going, and you can do that by subscribing to our Patreon.
That's right. For just $5 a month, you get access to new bonus episodes and our entire back catalog. And $5 a month, I mean, you can't even get a cup of coffee for that. So this is a steal. Our Patreon link is in the episode description in your podcast player, or you can find us at mvcpod.com. Also, if you could make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player so you don't miss new episodes, we would deeply appreciate it.
And a reminder that we donate our ad space on this show. So if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program for free, you can email us at moviesversuscapitalism@gmail.com.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with our conversation about Home Alone 2 with Evan.
Hey everyone, we've got a great organization we want to tell you about called Creatives Thrive NYC. CTNYC helps artists and creatives build the financial skills to keep art a priority in their lives while still putting food on the table. CTNYC is an innovative year-round training initiative providing expert financial knowledge, trusted resources, and a network of reliable partners to help creatives thrive in a chaotic and unjust economy.
CTNYC is a partnership between ArtBuild, PAM and Dialect, Get Shameless, and the Entertainment Community Fund, formerly the Actors Fund. These fully funded, completely free workshops share real-world financial tools as well as methods to build a life that fits your budget and your values.
These workshops are 100% virtual, and you do not need to be in New York or even the United States to join. Workshops begin from November 2024 and continue through June 2025.
Register at artbuilt.org/CTNYC and check out artbuilt.org, getshameless.com, and entertainmentcommunity.org.
Today we are joined once again by Evan of Left of the Projector Pod. If you don't know Left of the Projector, it is a weekly podcast on film from a leftist perspective. It covers film with guests of all stripes, layering in theory whenever possible. Evan lives in New York, and he works in the tech industry while remaining involved in local grassroots organizing efforts. You can follow Evan on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube at Left of the Projector Pod. Evan, welcome back.
Thank you, Frank and Rivka. I'm glad to be back.
We're so happy to have you back.
Yeah, it's been a minute. You were on early days. I think you were like in our first, I don't know, like dozen episodes or so.
V for Vendetta, if you haven't.
It's
heard
crazy
of it.
how these times fly. I feel like that. It doesn't even feel like it was that long ago.
It really doesn't.
Yeah, that's true.
And listeners should go back and listen to our V for Vendetta episode. I don't know if I ever told you, one of our most listened to episodes.
No. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, easily. So thank you.
Oh, well, I'm glad to hear it. That's a fun one. It's funny. I haven't watched that movie since, but a few people have been like, "Oh, you should do that on your podcast." I'm like, "Well, I don't know. Maybe I already talked about it. Go listen to that podcast."
What's new? How have things been since your last appearance?
Honestly, it feels like not too much has changed. I mean, I guess we've all taken in the different political landscape, or soon to change, but yeah, I mean, same job, same podcast, same coming on here. So literally, it's just we're like a Groundhog Day situation, I guess.
We are.
Yeah,
Although
yeah.
you and I both wore some red because it's a festive movie, a festive time. I guess Frank
that was a
didn't get the
complete
memo.
accident, but no, it was on
That's
purpose.
true.
It was on purpose. Yeah.
I'm completely drab right now, wearing black and gray, like a true New Yorker.
True New Yorker. Well, I guess that's on theme for this movie too, because we'll jump right into it because I can tell when we're all very excited to talk about a movie because it's like your tell, at least Frank, is that you're very like we're more tight-lipped because it's that desire to not give it away in the pre-talk, so it's kind of this like I just can't say anything because I don't want to like say it off mic.
I have so much to say.
So
it's
we're
just bubbling up.
Brimming. We'll jump into it. Today we're talking about a classic, Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, directed by Chris Columbus, written by John Hughes, starring Macaulay Culkin, Joe Pesci, Daniel Stern, Catherine O'Hara, John Hurd, Brenda Fricker, and Tim Curry. The budget for this film was $28 million, and it made a whopping $359 million worldwide. For reference, Home Alone 1 was made for $18 million and made about $476 million respectively. So
I just wanted to throw that in because I remembered that Home Alone was just such a massive hit. It was like one of the biggest hits up until that time, just for like budget compared to what it grossed. And Home Alone 2 also did very well.
So if you haven't seen this movie or haven't seen it since you were a kid, a little reminder about the plot. This film tells the story of sociopathic rich kid Kevin McAllister, who after a totally avoidable mishap at the airport ends up separated from his family and flying solo to New York City for Christmas. Upon arriving in the city with a bag full of cash and credit cards, Kevin cons his way into the Plaza Hotel and treats himself to every child's dream of a New York City holiday experience. Until he's revisited by his arch enemies, two fully grown adult criminals. Kevin must fight off the bad guys, reunite with his family, and save Christmas in the upper middle class romp of a somehow children's Christmas movie. I mean, why? No discussion. That's it. I feel like that's everything you need to know.
That was good. That was the first time you couldn't actually make it through one.
I was really trying to.
Yeah. So a little bit of historical context about this movie. It was released on November 20th, 1992. The other movies we've covered from this year are Newsies and Muppet Christmas Carol. So 1992,
Wow.
banger year.
Banger year.
So what was going on in the U.S. in 1992 is the final year of the George H.W. Bush presidency. In April, approximately 500,000 people march on Washington in support of abortion rights in advance of oral arguments in the case Planned Parenthood versus Casey. In late April, in Simi Valley, California, a jury acquits 4 LAPD police officers accused of excessive force in the videotaped beating of Rodney King, a black man, resulting in the 1992 Los Angeles riots, which resulted in 53 deaths and $1 billion in damage.
Damn.
Also a lot happening in the world in 92, it turns out. In May, the 27th Amendment to the United States Constitution is enacted regarding congressional pay raises. This is the last time a constitutional amendment has been added to the U.S. Constitution. In late May, Johnny Carson retires as the host of The Tonight Show, replaced by Jay Leno. In August, the Mall of America opens in Bloomington, Minnesota. In November, Bill Clinton defeats incumbent George H.W. Bush in the presidential election. And also in November, Disney releases the animated film Aladdin, which goes on to be the highest grossing film of the year.
Hell yeah, that's right. My first film in theaters.
One of my earliest as well. Damn. So you could just, in December of 92, just double feature Home Alone 2 and Aladdin in the theaters. Unbelievable.
Kind of pissed that that's not what happened. I only saw Aladdin.
I saw Home Alone 2, but not Aladdin in the theater.
Wow.
Oh, wow. So, Evan, usually we start the conversation with, why did you choose this movie to talk about on this podcast? You and I were kind of chatting about the choice of this movie. So this wasn't fully you being like, we have to talk about Home Alone 2. It was kind of like we were chatting about which Christmas movies. A negotiation of sorts. But why did it jump out to you?
So as I said, I saw this movie in the theater when it came out in 1992. Well, I guess I'm probably maybe older than both of you. I was 10 when it came out. So I was like the perfect age. I think he was 10, supposed to be 10 in the movie. So it was like seeing a kid your own age. And I didn't go to the movies very much as a kid with my family. I went with like other people. So I just have a memory of it being this big thing, going to see Home Alone 2. I love the original one. I do have a slight preference for the first film. But as far as like Christmas movies go and, kids' Christmas movies, I think that the Home Alone and Home Alone 2 are probably the two best Christmas movies outside of a couple maybe not so kid friendly movies like, if you're going to get into the Die Hard argument. But so I don't know. They're just like quintessential Christmas when I think of Home Alone. And also the fact that I live in New York, which I didn't at the time, it almost feels perfect to talk about it.
Wait, remind us, where were you growing up?
I lived in, so at the time I was in like the Maryland, DC area.
Okay.
So like things in New York I used to have family in New York, so we would go and I would know it. But watching it now, I'm like, how did he get from there to there in that long? All these like questions.
Did you have an uncle perchance in New York?
I did have an uncle.
Wow. Very Kevin McAllister of you.
Was he doing renovations in the early 90s?
Maybe. No, he did not. And he did not live he did live in the same neighborhood, but he didn't live in like this ridiculous row house also, which I don't know how he also could afford the place in France too. Like, what was this guy doing?
Yeah, the McAllisters, there's something going on with the McAllister financials, which we'll get into.
Also, did he not have kids? I feel like I got the sense that this uncle, unlike his brother...
No, he did.
Oh, he did.
He has one. They have one kid that we know
No, two.
of.
Well,
two in college, because in the first movie, only because I just watched the first one too, is they have two college kids, and they were in Chicago. So like in the original movie, like the oldest daughter.
Yeah, it's the one daughter of Uncle Rob is with
them.
But
I think they mentioned that she has
Paris.
a sister who's also in college.
Okay, got it. Okay, so Uncle Rob has two kids. We meet one of them in Home Alone. But
still.
Riv, what was your relationship with the Home Alone movies?
I think it was pretty like generic. Like I know I don't know if I've seen Home Alone 1. I mean, to me, Home Alone 2 was the only Home Alone movie. I think probably because it's in New York, and so that's what I think. It's because it's in New York, and it's so coded with the things that I was obsessed with at that age, which was money, money, money. Like Blank Check was for a while my favorite movie. Like, I just think anything where it's like a kid having independence to be like a free-wielding, like money maniac running, or like the limo, the like pizza, like all of that was like my version, as well as many kids' version in this country, of like a good fucking time. And so that was just, that's kind of like the most memorable stuff is, and I still get a hit from it. Like there's something so particular about how wealth is portrayed in like the 80s and the 90s that just like give me a Coke, like so it's so delicious
that
and crispy.
Coke in the champagne glass, every time.
Like this boy knows how to party, and then just so all of that stuff is really, that's like the most memorable. That I don't like go back and watch it often, although now that I've revived it will be but it's I love it. It's a good feeling. And also a terrible feeling. It's like, that's how we got here.
Definitely. There's like, this movie has blinders on in such a major way,
and such political intentionality, which I'm sure we'll get into, but all of that stuff that I'm like, I'm hooked in my DNA. I'm like, wow. And now Trump's president. Look at it, worked. It fucking worked. so
Yep.
good.
You didn't mention him in the original cast of characters. I'm disappointed.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
that's
Oh,
true,
we didn't want to
that's
give
true.
him a starring role. Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't he cut out of? I read that he's like cut out of most, like a lot of the reruns, and his son was really pissed about it
Oh, I
John
haven't
Jr..
read anything about that.
because I think
mean,
and
maybe.
it wasn't like personal, but I think they took it up like, oh, this is a political thing, and they're like, no, just often it's like that's a moment that gets cut for timing, and was so like often he's not in it.
It's funny. I could also see them like having not actually done that and them just saying they did it
Totally.
to get mad.
Yeah. So this is one of my, if not my favorite Christmas movie. I watch this movie every fucking year. Have since I was a child, since 1992. Since 1992, I've watched this movie every year. I was 4 in 92. I don't remember seeing this in theaters, but I mean, just like immediately we owned the VHS. I love it so much, and I love it more than the original Riv for the same reasons. Because like this is basically the exact same movie as Home Alone. Like beat for beat, it is the exact same. The same beats, the same character arcs, the same plotting. The only addition to this movie is all the hotel stuff and like the Tim Curry and
New
that whole
York.
cast of characters. And New York. And you know, the first movie's really about Kevin finding his independence and being able to take care of himself. Like there's a lot of and like that's what's amazing about these movies and why they resonated so much. They're just like kid fantasies. It's just it's you watching this kid get to it as a child. If you're a child watching these movies, you get to watch this kid enact your greatest fucking fantasies. And in the first
Truly.
movie, it's I get the house to myself and I could do whatever I want. And in the second movie, it's I'm fucking loaded and I can do whatever
And you're
I
all
want
my
in-
I have servants
in New York City.
Yeah.
And I love Christmas. So was so excited to revisit this. But you know, upon rewatch, especially for this podcast, I was like, ooh, there's some really disgusting politics embedded into this movie in different places. But I'm really excited to get into it.
I want the data. I want the statistics on how many kids actually like ran away from home in like an attempt to reenact their Kevin McAllister, because that's some. I'm surprised. I mean, did you both? I mean, I definitely did the like I'm leaving, or like the like I'm
Oh yeah.
I'm running
no.
away.
No,
No,
never
you
did
never
a
did?
runaway.
I
No.
didn't get out the door, but I did I performed the whole sequence prior.
Sure.
But I wonder how many kids were like, yeah, Christmas with the family? I think not. I've seen the blueprint for this and I shan't be engaging.
The thing about Kevin McAllister and why no other kid could do this is because he's operating at like a professional level con man. Like this
He's MacGyver. He's
Yeah.
straight up MacGyver.
he is conning adults left
Get
and right.
this
Like
kid to MIT.
the amount of street smarts and game this kid has to just fucking will people, to just wrap people around his finger, it's unbelievable.
Well, street smarts, I don't know, but the just because we'll talk about that in terms of his running around New York, street smarts or class and racial privilege, you know.
Sure.
Have either of you seen the movie The Good Son with Kevin McAllister?
Not a minute.
With Macaulay Culkin. Kevin McAllister. So it came out the year after Home Alone 2, and he's like a psychopathic kid in it.
It's like him and Elijah Wood.
Yeah, and it almost is like, is this just a prequel to that?
Wow.
He's just like the next logical step of like he's just beating up bad guys, and he's like, well, maybe I could do this to my friend, and like he's really evil in The Good Son. He like manipulates all the parents and all the people around him, and it's really a fucked up movie. Like it's kind of weird that he went from this to that.
It's not weird to me. They're not. It's not weird. There are little
Yeah, I guess
glimmers
right.
of it throughout this entire movie. Like when he's talking to the hotel staff, I'm like, this child needs to be pathologized. Like there's something going on
really
here.
fucked up.
And
Yeah.
it's also very clear he's using, and it's also like the trope of in the 80s and 90s of like conservatives saying like, oh, movie and video games like leads you to be violent. He's like watching these violent movies that in both movies, like these made up movies, like what I don't remember what they're called. I'm blanking out. Like
Angels with filthy souls.
yes. And so that he's like using these both to get his way and then also these manipulations later on in other ways. And it's, I don't know if that was an intentional thing or they just thought it was really funny. It's both. Maybe it's both.
Yeah.
I never made that connection. You're right.
Yeah, that's
I
really
don't know.
interesting. I think, like, to your point, though, Frank, about how he talks to, like, if we're going to start there, just, like, the way he interacts with the other adults. And I guess this goes kind of to my point about him not having so much street smarts as, like, the inherited arrogance of sort of, like, this upper, like, I know they're middle class, but there's, like, an upper middle class.
I'd say they're up for this time and this
With that-
this lifestyle
to
in this
take
house.
that
I would
many
say
kids
this is
to
upper
Miami.
middle class. Yeah.
To me, what's fascinating is it is sociopathic, but you're watching this kid just move around with this learned behavior of class dynamics and just like, I do believe kids learn so much of that stuff from their parents. And he's just, particularly when you're then set out on your own, it's a survival mechanism to just mimic how you've seen the adults in the world survive and behave. So the fact, like, it is so disgusting how he talks down to all of these adults who, for the most part, are all like beneath his class.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, especially
Such a good point.
Especially and then, you're watching him move through this world and not be questioned, and you're like, yeah, because he's a little white kid giving has all of this stuff of like, no one's questioning it because they're just like, oh, I assume this is a rich kid, and like he can get away with all those lies just because of his race and class. It wouldn't work in any other context.
Oof.
But the issue is that you just have no idea as a child watching that. And the thing is that's also really terrifying is, like, as a child, you're like, that's how you can, like, the messaging is just like, that's how you can get around in the world. It's actually good to talk that way because he's surviving and he is the hero of this movie. Like, no one ever faults this this kid, and nor should he necessarily be. He is a child. But, like, we're celebrating that behavior. So I'm just like thinking about, I'm just like, I can imagine that I took in a lot of that messaging myself as a child of like, oh, that's how you move about the world, and it doesn't work if you're not a white boy of a certain class who looks like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you look at the uncle in like both, in the beginning scenes when he, that's kind of the uncle's thing. Like he walks into him on the shower and he's like yelling at him and all these things. And
Yeah.
you look at him as the villain, right? Like one of the villains of the movie, like the mean uncle who like doesn't let the kid do what he wants. But the audacity for the kid to be talking to his uncle and doing these things it's just crazy. It's
Yeah.
I don't
And then
know.
the same for the parents. Like when
Yeah.
they go and
Yeah.
you're like, any parents that are not white and of a certain class who get stopped and they're like, what do you mean this is the second time you've lost your kid? CPS is getting called on them immediately. And that's
not
just
getting
like,
arrested.
Yeah.
they're like, that's just such a reality that I imagine like for so many, it's just,
Damn.
especially
Yep.
when you think about 1992, we're about to go into like the crime bill era. Like it has this like underlying darkness.
But you're right. Like the fact that this is an affluent white family creates like an inherent, I don't know, harmless, I'm in quotes,
Yeah.
harmlessness
Yeah.
with these characters, like you're saying, where it's like, oh, well, obviously this is a rich white kid, like he must be fine, or he must know what he's doing, or he probably does belong here, or he should be here, or he is allowed to be here.
Yeah, his
And you're
parents
right.
wouldn't abandon him. His parents, have enough money to make sure he's safe. Like, no, we're not worried about that because that stereotype
Yep.
doesn't exist for white families.
Oof, that was good.
Dark, Kevin. And
Yeah.
even how he walks through New York, and like particularly like the scene where he's walking through quote unquote like the dark side of New York, and then talks is like how he's interacting with like the prostitutes and the pigeon lady, and just like it's quite a thing to behold.
I mean, this is reminding me, he's even worse in some ways in the first movie. In the first movie, there's the scene with the pizza guy where he only tips him like 50 cents or something. And then when the pizza guy is upset about it, he does the whole Angels with Filthy Souls bit where he plays the TV and
Damn.
then the pizza guy thinks he's getting shot at. So this poor pizza guy gets a fucking dog shit tip, and then he's like, someone's shooting at me, and he's like running back to his car. He's falling all over the place, and it's played for laughs. Like, oh, look at Kevin torturing this poor like service worker.
And then in the second one, he gives Rob Schneider gum for his tip.
Fuck, that's so
That's
fucked
right.
up.
He's like,
And then,
oh, tip.
and then later is like, actually, you want this? So you're like, so you do know what a tip is?
He does
You're
know what a
just
tip is.
like, it's
He's just
you.
withholding a little shit.
He's withholding little shit, and again,
And
he's
his
a child.
brother gives him the chewed gum, right? Doesn't his brother like
Oh,
give
that's
him
right.
chewed gum later? So like the whole family is just cheapskates.
This family fucking sucks.
Kevin is a fucking child. So like at the end of the day, I have to imagine that's his parents, right? Like you learn how to tip first and foremost from going out to dinner with your parents. You see what's going on. And so clearly like he's seen his dad previously be like, you only tip when you want to bribe someone, and like a tip is not earned. You know, a tip is earned in this country.
Although his dad does tip the pizza guy well in the first movie. I remember that. Or maybe the mom does. Because the pizza guy goes, nice tip, thanks a lot.
Well, it's probably usually the dad, right? The dad's probably the one paying at dinners and things.
Oh, yeah.
The mom's like the one who's actually like nice.
Yeah, the dad's the shitty tipper.
Yeah.
That would make sense. That would make sense.
He didn't get that big house, you know, giving out big tips.
And this is a great time to talk about the McAllister brothers, because this has been like an online debate for the last few years of what does Mr. McAllister do to afford this lifestyle. And some people are saying that the McAllisters come from generational wealth. I don't think that's true because Uncle Frank seems to be broke, or is just maybe the cheapest one.
So if we're going to say that the other theory is that they're like gangsters or like in the mafia, is that the other?
Yeah,
kind of theory?
the other theory is that they are like a Chicago crime syndicate, and then the third option is just he works in fucking finance or something.
Or construction.
I was just having this discussion with someone, and I go with generational wealth. And I think that the second brother, I think his name is Frank. I think he's just like really cheap and makes his brothers just pay for everything. And it might just be
for the
that
whole vacation. If you've got generational wealth, you're still gonna be like, I'm not gonna pay for my whole family.
I see it because it's to your point earlier. It's like, how do you hold on to that? Like, I feel like the wealthiest people are usually the cheapest.
He's probably the youngest of the. Well, I don't know. Looking at him, he seems like he's probably older, but it's hard to say. I mean, the uncle who lives in New York, he's got this entire row house, which is, I actually looked up the address. It's worth like $4.5 million. That row house that they were that they go to, plus the flat in France where he can fit like 15 people, overlooking the Eiffel Tower. I mean, we're talking like multiple. So I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that's obscene wealth.
Yeah,
but they don't go to. I mean, their Miami Vacation. It's a lot of them. Granted, like they're not at the nicest.
It's a shitty hotel, right? In the second one in Miami.
I think the film is really pushing hard, like middle class.
It's pushing hard middle class, but it is.
But that's not necessarily what we're sniffing out.
No, yeah, they're definitely upper middle class, but the movie is definitely pushing middle class. You know, in the first movie, the house is in the suburbs. You know, this is a large family. Some of them share rooms. You know, like it's just like it had to be middle class because this needed to, you know, resonate with as many kids as possible.
Yeah. It's John Hughes. Like he plays every. I mean, I know he didn't direct this, but he wrote it. Mm-hmm. That's what John Hughes does. Like you think about like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. People all seem to live in this fantasy world where like a middle class person can have like a lot of nice things. I mean, Ferris Bueller was probably meant to be middle class, but he was rich. Like he had a really nice house. His parents had good jobs.
Oh yeah.
So
and Cameron was loaded.
Yeah. Oh, he was upper middle class. He was like trust fund kind of something or other. But I think you are meant to think that the McAllisters are wealthy, but I think like the older brother is like very, very wealthy somehow.
This is me just reflecting based on like feelings, but this conversation about middle class is really interesting. Again, this is just my reflections based on like vibes and feelings. But I was but it was so much like particularly in the aftermath of this election of how much Kamala was pushing this idea of reviving a middle class. She didn't even say reviving, but just like it was just middle class was what she spoke so often. Never working class, but middle class. And I just found myself just like baffled as to what a middle class it is or would ever be. Like I know there's probably, I guess this is why I'm saying reflections of vibes. I know there's probably a very clear economic answer, very based on like context of history. It's definitely changed and who gets to be that or who doesn't. But in terms of now, it's so, you know, I'm like, I don't know many like the middle class and the working class because of the wealth disparity. It's just been pushed so far together. But maybe, and I thought that was now, but I'm looking at the McAllister family and I'm thinking like, even the use of middle class in this feels like it's a mirage to kind of actually cover a pretty like upper class family, that like just the use of that terminology is like, and the propaganda behind it.
I mean, it's also as you were saying before, with like the kind of the privilege that the McAllisters have of like, this is only this like wealthy white people could get away with. I think middle class is often also coded as like a white dream often, and I think in America. And also you look, when you were talking about what was happening in America, the Bush era is ending, Reagan has gone through, and the 80s are over, when people could like kind of maybe lift themselves up in like, scare quotes. This is the 90s now, where Bill Clinton's about to just wreck everything with NAFTA and all these things that are going to happen. There is no real middle class. It's eroding at this point.
Right.
Like, there is though. I mean, now, 2024, there is really no middle class. It's just like the working class and it's the wealthy.
Yeah, which is why I'm like, it's like, who's going to work to pay are they going to work to pay the bills, or is everything paid for the most part from like this generational wealth? Or is he like a capitalist owner of a construction company? Like those are the questions, but the idea, I guess the propaganda of like, no, the McAllisters are middle class is meant to make us feel not ask those questions, It's like intentionally like, don't ask those questions, but like also don't consider the working class, because I think the more people who recognize their working class, the more dangerous it is for the capitalist class.
Well, this movie would be impossible if it was a working class family, because I mean, no, truly,
pitch it to us,
the road trip will be in a car.
I mean, the first movie would have taken place in a 2-bedroom house, and the whole part where he fights off the burglars would have been 3 minutes long, and they would have caught him because there's only 4 rooms in the house. So,
well, and then it's also interesting how in both movies, obviously, like the villain, is the burglars, the sticky bandits, I guess, in the Home Alone 2, but did Pesci and Stern, like they're then seen as like the underclass of this, right? They're like the criminals who can't do anything. The only way they can get by is to be criminals.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, obviously you need a villain, but I think it's very clearly like this is the other people in society that we need to have beyond bars. But see how easily they could get out of jail or break out of jail and
and there is a
encroach upon you.
Yes, there's like a class component to, like, if we're trying to justify, and obviously this is everyone listening, we get it. It's like a fun kids movie. We get it. But there's like I mean, Kevin just throws that brick at that man's head with no like,
oh my God,
pure sociopath.
Dead.
But I also have to think,
dead.
If you
He's
have
dead.
been, he's dead. If
He's
you've been,
dead. He takes 4 bricks to the head. 4.
If you've been
4 stories high.
Yeah, if like you've been growing up in this secluded upper middle class white area, and you are confronted with anyone who's not within that bubble, and that, like this is a stretch, but like I'm not saying like every upper middle class person would be able to like murder someone, but like it's just like there's a decreasing in humanity when you're like, I see these other people, these other freaking adults as like either people here to serve me or people I have to like teach to have friends, as he does with the pigeon lady, which we'll get to that, like such a demeaning relationship, or just like someone that I'm just like have not even, I get that they're coming for him. But even if they're coming for you, like, the boy could have gone to, like, I mean, this white boy could have gone to the police very easily. Like, he has no problem throwing that brick.
he
like,
knew.
Doesn't feel a thing, And again, I get it. That's the movie.
That's such a good point. Something I wrote down was just like, Kevin is a child's hyper individualist avatar. Like the way that he is he's like independent to a fault. And that exactly what you're saying, Rip. Like he could have just called the police and said, hey, the bad guys are going to be here at this time. That's it. That's all he had to do. Avoid all the other, but he is like suffers from such main character syndrome.
And it's also, you said hyper individual, it's almost like gives me this like capitalist vibe where, he doesn't care who suffers as long as he can kind of get what he wants. I picture like when he shows him, like when he opens a little sketch drawing of like all the little traps that he's somehow been able to plan in 20 minutes inside of this house he'd never been inside, which also funny. But he's like planning all these things and he's just going to just destroy I mean, these people should be dead, as you were saying, like bricks to the head, paint falling on them, the guy just falling through multiple floors. Like, oh, that's, I get it. It's like Looney Tune gags, but he is a psychopath, right? I mean, there's Kevin is, I should say.
Yeah, and if he wasn't so demeaning to everyone else, I wouldn't, it would be more like, but he just moves through the world like, I'm owed, it's so strange.
And he revels in it. He
revels.
He gets
like,
off
yes!
on getting over on these adults. He loves it.
Like the scene where he's in bed getting the ice cream, like that makes me, it's so weird. My inner child is like, that's heaven, that's so great. And then there's a part of me that wakes up and I'm like, that is so degrading and like strange, but like, that is a child who's been treated that, and it doesn't really track for Kevin because you're like, I mean, I guess that's him pining for this thing that maybe he's seen on TV and is so desperate for. But it takes a lot to just be like, yes, old man, you're my ice cream servant.
And then, then he has he gets the day that he goes in the limo. He's like, all these people are waiting on him, right? Like the guy who's the limo driver and the guy who brings in the pizza, Rob Schneider, and
right.
it's just,
the limo driver I found unbelievable because everyone else has a moment of like, fuck this kid. Even the ice cream scooper, the look on his face is like, fuck this kid. But the limo driver, the limo driver is so thrilled to be driving this little shit around New York, and I was like, no way that this guy is given this much to this job.
Real. Well, and most importantly, I feel like Kevin, the only reason he's like this is like, it's like, I have money now, so therefore I get to treat people like shit. That's kind of like I guess really pared down. That was sort of the message as a kid was like, when you have the dough, you can treat other people like shit because you're paying for everything.
Except for some poor people, like the pigeon lady. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, and he doesn't, and that's a little, he's more like, I have to like, it's like a charity-minded perspective. I mean, it's so, let's talk about the pigeon lady, because this was such a, fuck that. I was like, that was really the scene where I'm like, fuck you, Kevin. Like, fuck this movie. It's so
like the
demeaning.
scene in the Philharmonic or just all of them?
Yes, all of it, but particularly that Philharmonic scene. When you're like, not only, you're like, this, we Googled her, I'm like, this actress has acted in some fine films. I have to look it up. There was like, she's like worked with some fine directors, and I'm like, I'm sure this was a great payday, like great for this. Anyone in this film, good for you. But delivers this like just the beautiful like background to this character, and it's so like. And
it's also, I don't think I mentioned to you, Frank. I don't know if either of you have seen Mary Poppins recently. They basically like lifted this from the bird lady from Mary Poppins, who was played by like one of the most like an amazing actress, Jane Darwell, who I think won an Academy Award for Grapes of Wrath and like got thrown into that movie. This is just a useless fact, but she was in Mary Poppins because Walt Disney wanted her to be in the movie and like went to her house and was like, can you do this scene for us in this movie? And she's like, I guess I can't say no to Walt Disney, and was in the movie.
Wow.
I mean, Feed the Birds is one of the best songs.
Feed the Birds is a classic.
But see, song. That is respectful.
Yeah.
This is not. That was kind of like the point. Like in that, it feels like it's very nice. But in this, the pigeon lady is just like even below the criminals, right? This is the lady that's been cast out and like lives in the park.
Yeah, he feels shame. He like feels shame for her, and then comes in to like service and save her
with a trinket.
He also could have given her some money. I mean,
yes,
well, he buys her hot chocolate.
$1.25 in 1992.
$1.
When he comes out in the last scene of the movie. And he's like, it's Christmas morning. And he runs up to her and he's like, hey, I know you saved my life. And like, we built this bond or whatever. You're homeless. You have pigeon shit all over you. I need to give you this little trinket. This little trinket is really going to help you out. It's going to be important. Even though I was throwing cash around all fucking week to anybody, it's really degrading.
And I will say, I mean, it is degrading. That's the one thing where I'm like, that to me reads child. Like, I can understand a child being like, but you're right. The behavior is still like, who taught you? Where are you getting this from?
How much money did he spend on fireworks and green goo,
But this again goes back to, the parents and how they teach how like they're tipping and all these different ways that you learn. Like his parents probably perceive like, ooh, those icky homeless people that we live near in Chicago, like we get to walk past them, like don't look, kind of thing. And so that's probably the way he's perceived. But then he needs someone to talk to, and obviously he does help him.
The family you're right. The family dynamics are fucking, I mean, I would say they're abusive towards Kevin. So like if we're going to let Kevin off the hook a little bit, like they've lost this kid twice. They're okay with the brother being very abusive towards his little brother.
They also laughed at him in the school play, even like the uncle.
They
the whole
laughed
family.
Uncle Frank.
Yeah, like
Such a piece of shit.
and then they
What a
show
dick.
up when they show up to the plaza, and they're like screaming at all the staff for like letting the kid go, you're like, hello, you lost your son in the first place. Like, what? Are you kidding?
That does result in one of my favorite moments in the movie, which is when Catherine O'Hara slaps Tim Curry and he says, "Do bundle up, it's quite cold outside." And then his bottom lip trembles. It's like such a perfect moment.
Also the Grinch like when he's watching the Grinch in the limo, and then Tim Curry also has like the Grinch smile. Also, yeah. Tim Curry is brilliant in this, even in his like minimal scenes.
Yeah,
So
and I was on their side.
You were on the hotel staff side.
I
mean,
was.
they do get the most ripped off of everybody.
The only place where, unfortunately, it's Mr. Hector, right? Is that his name? What is
Who?
Tim Curry's character's name?
Oh, does he have a character name? Hang
I
on.
think on IMDb.
Hector, yeah, Mr. Hector. You're
Mr.
right.
Hector.
Wow.
Which, by the way, Spanish coded, right? That's how I take it. And then they cast Tim Curry. But the class stuff was there. The only thing is I wish they had, I wish the impulse had been like, we need to, I agree with like, why weren't they like, we need to let someone know, obviously, for the plot of the film. But I was on their side, at least he was the only person who was suspicious. The only people being like, something is not right here.
Was his story convincing? Like if a kid came into a hotel, I mean, he's pretty young, but if like a 15-year-old kid came into a hotel and had this story about his dad, and now obviously it can't happen because you make reservations in advance. Like he also got a reservation at the hotel, the Plaza Hotel on Christmas, like the day of.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
The big suite.
His way of manipulating the woman. I can't think of. They don't know if they have what her name is. The woman who's working.
The one woman who works at the
hotel. It's a very convincing story, and of course he uses a little talk boy to get his way on the phone and everything. It's
amazing.
I wanted one of those so bad.
He's the original
Everyone
scammer, and it's kind of interesting that I feel like that came back into theme. Like he reminds me of Anna Delvey. He's like an Anna Delvey character. Anna Delvey's more. Do you know Anna Delvey? She was. I can't remember all the details of her background, but she was not rich. So unlike Kevin, she was like basically doing all of these scams, posing as rich and like kind of just like getting to live at hotels and getting all this stuff just by playing up this class and like knowing how to do it so well, stealing lots of money from, robbing and stealing. And then she went to jail, and now she's like, she was just on Dancing with the Stars, literally with her prison like anklet on. And they did a big Netflix series called Inventing Anna about her, blah blah blah. But he reminds me of I guess to your point of, would someone believe that story? I think yeah, like I think people do. I think it's just that's the thing about class. It's like that's when you're like, oh, you can't say there are characteristics that come with it that you can put on and perform.
Yeah, a white kid with a credit card with his dad's name on it. I mean,
why not?
But like a white, little white kid with a name on it. Anyone else, they'd probably be like calling the police.
Yeah, exactly.
I buy it. Also, he's able to sell the shit out of it. Again, this kid has the confidence of an adult con man.
Yeah, totally.
He might have started scam culture, or like maybe Kevin McAllister laid the seeds for scam culture to bloom in our generation.
But did Blank Check come out after this movie or before it?
That's a good question.
It was funny. I just saw a clip on Instagram last night. The scene where he's like using the computer to manipulate what the check is going to say. Be like, this is the first like computer hacker kid or whatever. I'm like, damn. He kind of was.
After 94.
94. Okay. So
yeah,
they definitely were going
built
off
on
of
the
this.
theme. They're like,
Yeah.
But I guess to talk about this sort of the origins of this scammer, why we're so obsessed with that mythology and storytelling, like it doesn't work under, like it works so well under capitalism, because all of us, whether we are aware of it or not, are like looking for ways to survive and thrive in an impossible system. And so like the scammer is just another version of the American dream. And ultimately, like a capitalist is a scammer, is like the best scam artist of all. Like capitalism is the best scam art. And so it makes sense that like, even though we're like, oh, we revere a really good scam artist, particularly the closer they are to the capitalist class, you know? And so it makes sense that we're like,
Yeah.
Then you call it hustle, not scam. Then it's called hustling, not
exactly.
scamming.
They wouldn't call it scamming, but it's the same thing. I mean, that's what capitalists do. They scam off of all the labor and the working class. So there's no difference. So even though it's called different things, there's a reason that I think we look towards it with reverence. And I think there's a reason as kids, it's like an exciting idea, because even at that age, you kind of recognize like, I'm going to have to do some crazy stuff to make this happen, because like, I don't really know how people get rich, but that seems like a good plan.
Mm-hmm. And the irony of Donald Trump being in it too is like also just basically running a pyramid scheme or whatever. Just...
Yeah, he owned the plaza at the time, and he...
did he?
Yeah, that's why he's in this.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
In order to allow them to shoot in the lobby, he asked for a cameo.
That makes sense. Okay.
You know what? Guy is one of the best brand managers around. Yep.
I was gonna say one of my favorite lines in the like one of my favorite like kind of throwaway lines is when he's giving him the tour, like when Rob Schneider's taking him up to his room. He's like, "Oh, we've had people stay here like Herbert Hoover," and he's like the vacuum guy. I always find that funny. I don't know. Like as a kid, I'm sure I didn't get it. Like, oh, the vacuum Hoover, but yeah,
that's a great one. Something that surprisingly killed me this watch was when Pesci and Stern are at the ice rink, and Pesci just starts swatting at the pigeons with his newspaper. I don't.
Oh, yeah, he really hits him. He really got him.
He really hits him, but it's just like Pesci is at 190% in this movie. He is going off the just like
it's kind of hard to believe he's in this
voice.
Like, in these movies. It's like almost you're like this guy was in Goodfellas and he's in Home Alone
right, but
2.
For me, because this is what I knew him from first. Then my experience was watching Goodfellas. Like, oh, it's the guy from Home Alone 2.
Yeah, exactly.
That's true. I definitely did not see Goodfellas when I was 10.
It's amazing that he made this transition from like playing like hard ass mafia guys to Harry in Home Alone. I love them. This movie's also just a absolutely killer New York movie and a killer Christmas movie, and it looks incredible. Like, I don't know how Chris Columbus does it, but all of the moments of all of the wonder and just like the way he shoots New York from like a low vantage point, and the shot with the pizza and the limo, it's like he's like doing like a tracking shot, like while zooming in or something. And it just looks
Central Park, yeah.
Central
Gorgeous.
Park,
Yeah.
It just looks unbelievable. It like looks how your dreams of New York and Christmas.
He's
feel in
taken
your
out a
head.
lot of the people of color. It's like a
Yep.
Do you know how much of it they actually shot in New York?
I think
Do you have any
most,
idea?
it seems like most of it, right?
I mean, there are parts in it where it was very clearly scenes. I mean, obviously like the Rockefeller Center and some of the other ones, but like the shot of the actual like row house is not actually, that's some set somewhere, obviously.
Right.
But
The exterior of the brownstone is real, and it's from a New York Times article that I read. It's in fact the real address,
oh,
the one that's written down in his dad's address book, 51 West 95th Street. And I'm just gonna share my screen with the two of you so you can see.
but yeah, I looked it up also how much it cost when it was sold, like in 2019. It was like 4.5 million.
So for the listener, this house is on the Upper West
Honestly,
Side.
4.5 to me feels like it's cheap compared to like what I would assume.
Yeah, the New York Times article said it was selling for 6.7 million, and this was a few
Oh,
years
maybe
ago.
That sounds
maybe
more like
that
it.
was an older sale, the one I
I was
saw.
like,
Yeah, it is on 95th Street, Upper West Side, just a few houses down from Central Park. So
damn, some nice
Yep.
real estate.
And he somehow gets from there to like the bottom of the park where the toy store is, like carrying like the buckets of paint and like the like plank of wood. He's just like, I'm just going to trot down the street. And that's the other thing too. He's like trotting around New York by himself as a 10-year-old, and no one thinks like, maybe I should get someone and call somebody.
well, that's not what cops do. Yeah.
Or any of the people.
What?
I mean, to me, I'm like, I've been in New York. If there's a child walking around at that age, people are like, where are your parents? That doesn't track. But again, for every child's fantasy, it has to. You're like, wow, he's getting away with it.
There was also something else I randomly caught. I tried to take a picture of it on my phone while I was watching it. So I actually watched this in like a hotel room, which is kind of funny given that there's like the scenes of him in a hotel room. But when he sees the Joe Pesci and Daniel Stern for the first time, and they see him in front of by the toy store, I think, and he starts running away, and he like buys the necklace and he throws it on the ground, like the little beads. The person who's selling the necklace was wearing a keffiyeh.
Wow.
Oh, I did not clock that.
And I like paused it. I'm like, is that right? And I don't know. I don't know who. It was just a random thing. It just
good catch. I wonder if that is now going to be edited out versions.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't notice if you weren't like watching.
Now that Evans alerted the press,
this movie will be on rerun on cable this holiday season, so keep an eye out.
What about? We didn't really talk much about the toy store, and that's like another one of the like.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow. What a beautiful place, Duncan's Toy Chest.
Another movie making thing. We're just like, that toy store looks like fucking magic. Well, you imagine like a Harry Potter version of a toy store to look like in real life.
Totally. And also Mr. Duncan is probably one of the best people in the movie, right? Like not only the charity, which, charity, okay. But more so the business practice of I love the point of wow, you let the kids play with the toys in the store. I do remember toy stores back in the day, particularly in the Upper West Side, when there were it was not just, it wasn't how much can you get, don't touch this, da, da, da. It was you could go in there and play with toys and not buy anything and leave, and that was okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I liked that.
The idea that he's giving all the money to charity, does it make him seem like a good person? I mean, it is a good thing to do, to donate, I don't know,
and do we believe
$500,000, whatever, all this money. But at the same time, it also shows the deficiency. Why does the guy who owns a toy store have to give to the hospital so they can not let people die in their hospital?
For his tax write-off.
Children. The children's hospital.
A children's hospital is underfunded. It's
totally.
You don't think about that, but yeah. 1992, I don't know, maybe they should be funding that instead of
totally
something else.
100%. The children's hospital shouldn't need funding, but it is very nice that he is donating his Christmas Eve earnings.
Well, it's just a good reminder. Yeah, you're right. A reminder of the role of charity versus mutual aid. That charity allows people like Mr. Duncan. Not that that's not still a great thing to do in this system and great, but it allows Mr. Duncan to be the great old man, and then it allows Kevin McAllister to come and feel bad for this child in the window, and again be I'm good, I'm better than you, and I'm gonna save you with my my MacGyver skills. But yeah, certainly the charity model is you're I'm sure that he's doing this for the tax write-off as well. This isn't just all the profits, my guy.
Mr. Duncan is a fucking shark. Are you kidding? I mean, do you see how much square footage he has on the Upper West Side?
But he gave away a toy. He gave away those turtle doves. He's a generous man.
You're right. Even that, yeah, you're right.
It's not even a toy. It's decorations.
He just made that story up too.
No, in Kevin's defense, again, that was the moment I'm oh, he's a child, and he's not as Mr. MacGyver's not that smart, because he's wow, I'm gonna get this for free. You're you just gave him all that money, dude. It's not. He also gave him this ridiculous story about how he had all this money, and he's well, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Yeah.
No, I think he picks. I think he's the one adult. Again, I've seen this movie so many times in the actor's performance where he's looking at Kevin this is a bullshit story.
It's interesting. It is the one adult that Kevin kind of is the least. He doesn't talk down to him much. And he is the most.
No, he wants the toys.
He wants the toys, but he's also the closest to the wealthy white older man. He's the closest to who in this framework, if Kevin doesn't respect people on a class scale, because that's what he's been taught, this older man sort of gives that off closer than anyone else. He's not so much of service. You know what I mean? He's not immediately serving Kevin.
That's true. But Kevin does think that he...
Yeah, Kevin. Yeah,
I'm not going to press this boy because
Kevin doesn't know he's the owner right away.
Yeah, he doesn't know he's the owner, and he's still nice to him. And then he sees the portrait, and he's oh, maybe that's the owner. Yeah. But you're.
But I think he gets the sense of this is an older white man who I can respect versus you're my limo driver, you're my bellhop,
Yeah, this is a sweet grandpa.
Or even his uncle, like his uncle he like doesn't like for being just a jerk to him all the time, and doesn't. I don't think he respects his parents even really.
He's such a little lippy shit. It's unbelievable. The way that he talks back to parents, the absolute fire insults he's able to just rattle off at people. Unbelievable. When he says to Uncle Frank, "Wouldn't want to spoil your fun, Mr. Cheapskate." I'm like, God damn. You let a 10-year-old, how does a 10-year-old come up with that?
That's where you could say that the uncle
crazy.
is clearly just like, he's cheap. He doesn't spend anything. He makes his brothers do all the spending, right? Like even he knows it.
All right. Well, I think now's the time that we're going to give awards to this movie, right? I think we'll get to some other stuff in here. So, Evan, you might remember we've got 3 awards we do. Our first award is Best Politics. So this goes to the character with the best politics in the movie.
Trying to think, can I only maybe if I transpose like politics that I think that someone might have on them? I mean, like Tim Curry, I don't know. Like one of the people who works at the hotel probably has better like class consciousness and like ideas about how the world actually works. Because think of all the things you witness as a employee at a hotel. I just like Tim Curry, so I'm going to go with Tim Curry.
I mean, I love Tim Curry in this role. I think he's so fucking funny. I agree that with what Rivka said earlier about like he's the only one that's saying like, hey, maybe we should check where this fucking kid came from. So it's like instincts are right, but I don't like his tactics. His tactics are really gross and kind of.
He does sneak into the room. It's a little weird.
Sneaks into the room, and
It's a child.
he's also getting off on catching this child.
Yeah, it's weird.
Does not do the adult thing of saying, okay, seems like a serious situation. I got to make sure, this is a child, whatever.
Yeah.
I would probably vote for Mr. Duncan for all the reasons we just kind of talked about.
I feel like there was such a missed opportunity. I thought it was going to be the pigeon lady. And then I'm like, oh, she's going to tell us a story where it's like, she's going to give the real lesson to Kevin. Like there was an opportunity there for it to be like, well, this is why I'm out here in this situation. This is how my material circumstances really led to this. But no, it's just because it was like heartbreak.
Yeah. I got broken up with.
Nothing to do with the, economics or government. No, it was heartbreak.
Yeah, it's the liberal conception of homelessness.
It's her, and therefore it's her choice, because homeless people choose to be homeless, just like this pigeon.
That's exactly. It's actually probably even more the conservative conception of homelessness, which is you chose to be there.
So it can't be her. I thought it was going to be her. It's probably, you're right. It might be.
Can't be any of the cops.
No, I mean, Mr. Duncan, it's the guy who sold the necklace with the kufiya.
So I'll afterwards, I'll send you the picture. It's funny. I was considering saying that. I'm like, oh, or is it the bad guy in the movie he watches, The Filthy Souls?
I think Mr. Duncan.
No, he probably has bad politics.
Mr. Duncan is but Mr. Duncan, you're right, is just probably not a good guy politically. Like Mr. Duncan's voting for Bush. Mr. Duncan's maybe voting for Trump.
I don't know. I feel like in a few years he'll be a Bloomberg guy.
Yeah,
he's on he's liberal, but he's on like that end of things.
Yeah,
I think it has to be for just there's no one else.
This movie really lacking. All right, so this should be a little bit easier. This next award is Worst Politics. Goes to the character in the movie with the worst politics. Although now that I'm saying it, just competitive as hell. I know we'll put Kevin out there, but I'm just going to say it off the top. I think Kevin's a child. Kevin can't even vote. He might find a way. And honestly, like, if you're scamming that, like, cool.
You're right. This is reprehensible learned behavior, but he is still a child.
But I refuse to let us give this to Kevin.
So we have to give him that leniency.
One of his parents, I mean, the dad? I don't know.
The dad, probably. If we're taking the evidence based on, like, how this kid moves through the world.
Yeah, if we're picking up on context clues.
Yeah, I'm going to say. And also, like, fuck you. You lost your kid twice.
Yeah, I'm not going to give it to Catherine O'Hara. I'm going with the dad.
Peter McAllister? That's a safe bet.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Peter McAllister.
All right, and then our last award. Oh, really? I came up with a different title for this award. Cool. It's not a major change, but for me, it just made more sense. I'm always tinkering with things. Our final award is Better Supporting Character. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this goes to the supporting character that this movie actually should be about. Now I don't have to say spin-off anymore.
Yeah. Like
Better supporting character.
Better supporting character.
Only the 20 people who have listened to every episode care about this.
But I probably would want to watch a movie about Joe Pesci, whether it's like
Absolutely.
like becoming like how he got into crime. It's actually like the movie Goodfellas is like the prequel, or some, the way around. But yeah, or Tim Curry, or like like a movie about the hotel with Tim Curry and Rob Schneider. But yeah, I'm gonna go with Joe Pesci.
I want a documentary about the pigeon lady. Like that's the style. Just like really slow, Wim Wenders-esque, like just slow and pigeon lady.
I want the Uncle Frank movie. I just want to dig deep into that man's psychology. See him at home with his family, who he hates. What's he do? Like, what does he do for work? How does he feel? Like, I feel like there's like a death of a salesman within Uncle Frank's story somewhere, like a deep tragedy.
Totally.
I mean, maybe he lost all his money in some like pyramid scheme. You know, like maybe he did get all this money and lost it all, and now he's like the joke of the family.
That's good. That's really good. If the three brothers all inherited the generational wealth and he lost his third of it, oof.
Everyone was getting rich with like that kind of money in the 80s, and like he somehow fucked it up.
Yeah, he got into like the savings and loan business for a long time.
Yeah.
He didn't invest in Apple like his brothers.
Yeah. Dude, this was great. Thank you.
Yeah, this was so much
Thank you
fun.
again for coming back.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So before we wrap, the last thing we like to do is ask our guests what you've been up to, what you've been doing in your everyday life where you get a chance to practice your anti-capitalist values.
Yeah, where's your charity money going?
Yeah, I mean, I think if I was thinking back to when you asked this question, when I did the last episode, and it was more around like kind of like teaching my, values to my kids, which is still something that I would say.
Yeah.
Which is still
Very
something
appropriate for this.
which is something, yeah, I guess it's perfect. But I guess I'll add to it, like, because that's still the case. It hasn't changed, like trying to, teach them those kind of things. But then I would say I'm also in the process of like potentially, and I've done some things here and there with the PSL in New York, but I'm currently looking to become a member, or I'm looking in the process, like it's a kind of a long process to become a member, some education classes you take and that kind of thing. So,
Cool.
And for anyone who doesn't know, that's the Party for Socialism and Liberation. And so I'm looking to be more involved in that, but
Very cool.
I think
great.
that's probably the one thing.
Awesome. Thanks, dude.
Yeah.
Well, it was great seeing you, and hope you have a happy holidays.
Yeah, thank you for coming on.
Yeah. Have a Merry Christmas and what is it? And a Happy New Year. What does he say? Damn it. I was going to use the
Merry
line.
Christmas, you filthy animals,
And a Happy New
and
Year.
a Happy New Year.
Let's all go to the library.
Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to support this show and get access to our Patreon episodes, the link is in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com.
Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you're part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program, email us at moviesversuscapitalism@gmail.com. That's moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
For next week, we will be watching the 1988 Bill Murray Christmas Carol adaptation, Scrooged.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.